Did you ever wonder how a once respected company like Tyco, known for security solutions, ended up in a massive scandal? Let's dive into the shocking saga of corporate wrongdoing involving top executives Dennis Kozlowski and Mark Schwartz. They cooked up a scheme to steal hundreds of millions of dollars from Tyco's funds. Their actions, from lavish spending to shady stock deals, not only hurt shareholders, but also stained Tyco's reputation. Let's uncover the disturbing truth behind this colossal fraud. Tyco, the security giants, has encountered a sad chapter because of the two managers' conduct activities. They had defrauded all over the place and had left behind a trail of hundreds of millions of dollars missing. Yet, the firm was profitable to the extent that they had a turnover of up to $40 billion in the early 2000s, but their reputation became very flimsy. Tyco, unlike others, was an offspring of the 1960s that grew fast by acquiring other companies. It was a winning technique, with the company value showing strong growth in the 70s and 80s. They began with semiconductors, but then concentrated on security equipment. This was a strategy of merger and acquisition, and they invested in construction and healthcare. In 1992, there was a great change at Tyco. Dennis Kozlowski was appointed as CEO, and he was replaced the following year. He continued to buy mass shares of other companies, and also the company expanded internationally very successfully. Despite all of the doubts and naysayers, they have even made it into the S&P 500. They had to close their main New York offices in favor of moving to Florida, which left employees in a problematic situation of having to move as well. The top management of the company provides such a loan facility that is of no or low interest up to the employees, which was used by Kozlowski and the CFO Mark Schwartz. In addition to the program named as the DTI, there was the Tyco KELP, or the KEP, which is an employee loan program for the corporation. These rewards were top executive compensation targeted towards a huge number of share options. When they reached retirement, they received the stock grants, and they then had to pay the taxes on what was for them a lot of money. Sometimes, the investors had difficulties in the process of selling the stock unit to pay the taxes. KELP therefore acted on behalf of Tyco by guaranteeing that the latter could take off financial burden caused by taxes from the rival company by giving it a loan without interest when needed to later on help turning the equity into cash. The non-interest KELP loans were made specifically for the executives to borrow funds with no interest that will be used in paying taxes on stock compensation gratification. These loans were all due once. I'll be in the position where I would have cash in hand to offset the debt. This had been duly documented even by SEC submissions. Nevertheless, Kozlowski and Schwartz misused this scheme and drew hundreds of millions of dollars. The majority of this cash went into the pocket of government officials instead of being used for the intended purpose. Kozlowski allegedly used the money for his own enjoyment and bought himself things like paintings, yachts, jewelry, mansions, and summer houses. Besides, he spends the money on his own business and other investments. Many people also took a lot of money, about $75 million, out of the pool for their own personal expenses and investments. The defrauders kept the spendings away from the company and its investors in the black. Yet, they didn't settle for that. It is not only the case that they abused the company's relocation loan program, which was originally meant for other staff members, but they also used their position in the company to their advantage. They were not as lucky as the KELP program allowed them to be, but they still managed to deploy tens of millions of dollars of it for the wrong causes. To illustrate, Kozlowski bought an $18 million house in Boca Raton for fancy uses. He did not care that it was in Boca Raton. The house price he borrowed was only about a third of the loan. The rest of the money, around $21 million, he spent on buying mansions in places like New Hampshire, Nantucket, and Connecticut. Not only were these places quite far from Boca Raton, but they also were completely different. He also purchased a $7 million flat in New York City that he didn't stay in himself, but for his ex-wife. CFO Schwartz could not be outdone by her either, indulging in a $17 million mansion in Boca Raton and a $6.5 million apartment in New York City. In addition to that, part of their cash was used for the purchase of a yacht and for real estate investments. Such individuals not only had the ability to get these loans for themselves, but also had the skill of turning them into their gifts. In 1999, they cooperated and rid themselves of the $37.5 million which they owed to the Tyco company. Tyco, as a matter of fact, even forgave the loans, thus giving both Kozlowski and Schwartz $37.5 million. They never told anyone about this forgiveness on any financial reports or announcements. But $37.5 million was only a small part of the hundreds of millions of dollars they borrowed from the company. In the year 2000, Kozlowski fired up a scheme which entailed a loan forgiveness of relocation to several of his employees. However, under this program, the borrowers of forgiven loans are asked to sign confidentiality agreements which prohibit them from revealing the remission except to their designated counselors. In the wake of such a move, Kozlowski and Schwartz racked up $33 million and $16.5 million in loan forgiveness each, which reached a total of $15 million in payoff from Tyco to the CEO and CFO. To conceal this issue, these two guys used a very clever way, which was putting it in the public offering of the company. With this tactic, he was contented, and with that, he tried his luck on another strategy that earned him more than $50 million in forgiven loans. The program, which was initiated subsequently, was made murky by the fact that they were under the veil of corporate activities, especially from the sales of shares. In addition to these big projects, Kozlowski and Schwartz also conducted many smaller one-off schemes on their own. For example, Kozlowski directed Tyco to buy one of his old houses in New Hampshire in excess of the real worth. His house was appraised at $1.5 million, but Tyco paid 3 times the value of his house. Schwartz also went that way by selling property to Tyco at a price higher than the actual value. On top of that, both Kozlowski and Schwartz had luxurious apartments in Manhattan, worth about millions of dollars, but Tyco footed the bills. They didn't pay rent, so you wouldn't have thought they could own the apartments. In addition to that, they'd used Tyco's private jets for their trips and personal pleasure, which had cost a fortune for the company. In conclusion, Kozlowski and Schwartz were prosecuted for selling Tyco stock illegally. At times, they simply couldn't sell some of the products. They hailed these transactions by transferring the ownership to the foreign affiliates of Tyco through the secret accounts. This exposed them to a higher degree of profits and insulated them from the decline of Tyco's stock. The scandal resulted in Tyco's stock falling by 55% after it had been listed on the stock exchange. A total amount of not less than $70 billion was diminished because of the shareholders. In the case of Kozlowski, it was also 6.5 years in prison. He had thrown a $2 million birthday party for his wife before she left him and took up with a property developer shortly after he was sent to prison. Nowadays, he leads a modest life in a 2-bedroom apartment in New York after serving his sentence. Schwartz was in prison for some time, but currently is a free person working as an ordinary middle-class man. Tyco lived a little more than a decade after the scandal before it was acquired by Johnson Controls. This purchase will certainly put Tyco on the brighter side, as the scars of these two executives' greed will have long been buried. That's all for this video. However, if you like this video, then please click that like button and subscribe to my channel for more content. Leave a comment expressing your opinion on the cases of American greed discussed in this video. Last but not least, I'd like to thank you for your attention, and I hope to see you again in the next one.